NBA 2K12 was a big title, of course. The success of NBA 2K11, we all know. Over 5.5 million units sold worldwide, over 20 Sports Game of the Year awards, and a lot of expectations, a lot of people asking us, how are we going to top 2K11? What kind of things are we going to pull off that really set this game apart and get our fans to purchase this year's title, because many were content with last year's game. I think we really put together a really well-designed feature set, a really well-thought-out feature set with features like NBA's Greatest, the Association Online, huge My Player improvements, tons of gameplay improvements. I really think this year's game is very special. I felt incredibly strong about NBA 2K11. That turned out really well. I think we really pulled the rabbit out of the hat with 2K12. I think fans are going to be ecstatic about this year's game, and let's get to the questions.
Right on. So with that, we're going to kick it off with the NBA's Greatest questions. So the first one is, the Michael Jordan content in 2K11 was incredible and a game seller for many. With the addition of numerous basketball legends instead of just one, how deep of an experience can fans expect to have?
Obviously, the NBA's Greatest feature was something we kind of built out of the Jordan Challenge from 2K11, which featured 10 of Jordan's most memorable games in our eyes. The NBA's Greatest actually takes 15 of what we consider to be the greatest and most influential players in NBA history and really puts them in the spotlight. So just sheer number of games alone, which is a terrible judge of depth, we do have 50% more games than last year, since each legend has one game highlighted to them. The actual overall depth of the feature is staggering, though. I know that a developer insight went out today on our NBA 2K Facebook page that really detailed some of the presentation aspects of the NBA's Greatest games. If you go back and read my earlier developer insight on NBA's Greatest, you can really kind of piece together just the amount of work that we put into the game this year. So as far as the question of how deep the experience is, I think it's incredibly deep, incredibly enriching, and ultimately a huge learning experience for NBA fans of all knowledge levels.
Right on. Thanks, Eric. The next question is, how much infighting came about with the development team when you were selecting the legendary players and teams? And were there any good ones that got left out by a thin margin?
I think Mike can back me up when I say that we have a bunch of strong minds on our team, a bunch of people who, really have strong opinions on what they want to see, and there was definitely a lot of fighting going on about which 15 players we were selecting. I don't really want to talk about any guys that got left out by a thin margin. I really want to focus on our 15, but I can say something that we kind of didn't have a lot of foresight on initially, was that we came to an agreement on the 15 guys, after weeks and weeks and weeks of arguing. And then it kind of hit us that we have to pick who the 15 opponents are going to be, which turned out to be just as big of a challenge, because people are really passionate about them getting their guy on the opponent team and just really showcasing as many legendary players as we can. So it was a big fight, but at the end, I think it ultimately led to a great product.
Right on. And going back to the presentation you were talking about earlier, the next question is, when moving through the different eras of basketball, does the game change uniforms such as high socks, short shorts, and announcers? Yeah, we definitely went to as many era-specific details as possible when recreating these challenges. I know there's some gameplay footage out there for the Bill Russell game, and just watching that, you can see those knee-high socks, the very short shorts, the almost elastic-fitting uniforms. Just every detail we could think of, you're going to notice was thought about and executed on in these games, and that goes down to the black and white grainy effect on the Bill Russell game, and when you move into the early 70s, you have the Jerry West kind of pastel-colored games. On into the washed-out 80s games. I mean, it just goes on and on. This was a very big feature for us, and pretty much no detail was left untouched. Right on. So what type of research went into getting the classic rosters, uniforms, courts as accurate as possible, and was it more difficult than getting the current stuff correct?
It was considerably more difficult because it wasn't as simple as, turning on the TV and finding the game on to watch, which is obviously very easy to do with any game played current time. I can access League Pass from my iPad, for example. I mean, I have full access to any content I want. Getting a lot of these 60 teams and 70 teams was a really big challenge for us. Getting the uniforms and courts, that's not terribly difficult, but getting enough quantity of footage to assess things like signature shots and just general tendencies was a big challenge for us. But fortunately, we do have a great partner in the NBA who went above and beyond in helping us to really recreate this experience with full 100% authenticity.
Right on. And speaking more to the presentation of games played in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and early 90s, as they all have different visual styles that represent their respective era, was this difference planned from the beginning to continue the game's trend of authenticity?
Yeah, definitely. When we outlined this feature, we listed out all of the things that we wanted to do to really set these games apart from just regular quick games, NBA Today games. And that went down to the crackly, poppy, lo-fi audio you hear in that Bill Russell game, to the different camera effects we have going on, just all the overlay styles. We wanted to do as many things as we could to not necessarily differentiate it, but to make it completely authentic to that era.
Right on. Next question is, players look different throughout their careers. Which looks will we play as with the legends? For example, young Jordan, fluffy hair Larry Bird, and the goggle Jabbar.
You're actually we have every player era specific to their teams. So we have that 1965 Jerry West, and we have the 71 Jerry West, and we have, the young Abdul-Jabbar when he was on the Bucks with Oscar, where he's got the chops. We got the mid-'80s Kareem with the goggles and no hair. You'll see the players definitely progress through their careers depending on which teams you're playing with. So it's not just Kareem in the game; it's Kareem, many different eras of Kareem, and the same can be said for a number of other players. Specifically, you'll see a second-year Kobe Bryant with the fro. I mean, we've really gone, to all ends to really create a true definition of the NBA's history over the last 45 years, and I can't say it enough. That's something you'll continue to see in this mode.
Right on. Next question is, with the addition of all the new legends, will we be seeing the classic team rosters expand from what we saw in last year's Jordan Challenge?
Yeah, I mean, last year's Jordan Challenge, there was, a finite number of teams in the game. I think it was, I don't know, top of my head, maybe like 13, 14, 15, 16 teams. This year's NBA's Greatest has 34 classic teams. If you take into consideration there's only 30 NBA teams, we really feel like we've almost doubled the amount of content in the game this year, and almost like we created two games in one, in the aspect that we have all 30 NBA teams with all the love that we've always given them, and then we have these 34 classic teams on the same level where these players have signature shots and all their tendencies and player faces and just all the details that go into that. I think the value within this title is probably more than we've ever given to our consumers. So obviously something we're very excited about. And, classic team roster is big this year for sure.
And this is the final question we have for the NBA's Greatest section. Will any of the NBA's Greatest be integrated into other game modes?
The way it works as far as getting these teams outside of NBA's Greatest is that whenever you win an NBA's Greatest game with a focus player, so for example, when you play the Michael Jordan game against the Hornets, when you win with the Bulls, those two teams become available for use in other game modes, such as quick game or playoffs or season or any of the association. You can do whatever you want with those teams once you've completed that challenge in the NBA's Greatest.
Right on. So next up, we're going to move on to some My Player stuff. The first question in this section is, what are the newest features that make the most impact on the My Player mode?
My Player mode saw a number of improvements this year as people kind of read through my developer insight. I don't know if there was any one thing standing out of the pack. I thought we really had a lot of features that kind of, gave it the whole new appeal that it has this year. I think some of the highlights for me, personally, that I think will really make the biggest impact is the experience once you get to the NBA, or getting to the NBA, I should say. Last year, you kind of had to play the Draft Combine and the Summer League, which, while authentic, was kind of a somewhat dull experience in that you had a good 5 or 6 hours of, play time where there was no commentary, no presentation, no crowd, really nothing that kind of got you amped up and those build-up to your NBA career. This year, it's all about that rookie showcase. It's a coming together of all the top rookies in the draft. It's high energy. It's exciting. You really have that one game to showcase to the GMs and scouts that you have what it takes. And it's all led up with, the pre-draft interviews where the GMs are asking you questions. David Stern, fully integrated into the game this year, complete commentary and all. Just a lot of things going on in the mode. Contracts, where you can earn money, spend your money. Tons and tons and tons of new press conference questions, over 500 this year. Just an endless list of improvements. I think My Player probably got the single biggest upgrade in the game this year.
Right on, Eric. Thank you. That's a really good overview. So jumping down here, we're going to take a look at the next question. In the Developer Insight number 10, the shot compositing mechanic was discussed. Can you describe that mechanic in more detail and explain how it is integrated into the My Player mode?
Yeah, this is Mike. I'll take that one. Shot compositing is something that I pushed really hard for earlier in the year because, as you know, signature style and signature jump shots is a huge part of our game, and we were getting to the point where, frankly, it was tough to manage all the content. There's just, we run into memory issues sometimes. We add so many animations to the game, and so shot compositing, what it does is it allows us to kind of mix and match two animations together and kind of Frankenstein them together, if you will, into a new animation. And so what we wanted to do was be able to take the lower body portion of a player of a given jump shot and add on any other type of upper body to them, so the shooting form. So basically, what you come down to is, we have in the past we've had maybe 200 or so stick shots in the game, and now that we have the shot compositing feature, it's exponentially increased. We're somewhere, I think, in the neighborhood of maybe 19,000 unique combos you can create, and that's just the standing jump shots alone. So if you add on all of the different types of shots in the game, the pull-up jumpers, the spin jumpers, step-back jumpers, you're looking at, you might see upwards of 30,000 plus unique jump shots in the game. So it's a really cool piece of tech for us, and something that you asked how is it integrated into MyPlayer. In the Create Player interface in the MyPlayer, when you go to create your character, you can go to the Signature tab, and in there, the first thing that you can do is set your player's shooting form, and that's kind of like what I was talking to you about before, is the upper body release and how he shoots the ball. And then you can also set kind of the base of the shot, so you can set whether he's a set shooter or he's got flailing legs, he kicks out high, or whatever you want to do. And basically build that shot for your character, and you can create so many different looks and so many different styles that it really just adds to the replayability of the game and the fun of making your player.
Wow, thank you, Mike. That's really incredible. Moving in here, going back to the overview that Erick laid out earlier, we're going to get into a little bit more specifics. The next question is, how difficult was it for the team to scrap the draft combine, knowing that it was a pretty big part of the franchise over the last 2 years?
This is Erick. I'll jump back on these. With NBA 2K, we're always looking to evolve the game, change it up, make people interested from year to year. The draft combine was a lot of fun, but this year was all about the hype of getting to the NBA, the excitement in getting there. So in that regard, you got to make decisions and not look back on them. I thought it was pretty easy to do. So far, the feedback has been through the roof for anyone who's played the mode up to that point. And I definitely believe in continuing to evolve features, and will continue to do so in subsequent years.
All right. How did the draft interview process come to life? What sort of research was done to determine the types of questions? So
I'm always interested in some of the off-the-court experiences. I think we've done exceptionally well in MyPlayer in the last couple of years in nailing the on-the-court experience and just that game-to-game routine. With this year's MyPlayer, I was really, really interested in kind of expanding on that off-the-court experience and that whole building your persona, giving yourself a personality. And, the pre-draft interviews was a great way to do that while kind of tapping into something that really takes place in the real world that hasn't really been, represented in any sports game, really. These teams are going to be investing millions of dollars into these players, so they definitely want to sit down with them, get to know them, kind of feel them out, see what they, where they're from as a person, what they think of the team, for the team that's interviewing them. It's just a really interesting thing. As far as what kind of research was done, we're very fortunate to have access to a lot of players, GMs, coaches, so I was able to and while many of them wouldn't tell me the exact questions they ask, and I totally understand that, they really gave us a general rundown on the types of questions they ask and what they're kind of looking for with the players, and we really translated those direct answers right into the game. So the questions you're going to be asked are authentic in that regard, that they're going to be along the lines of exactly what these players are asked when they're going through the process of becoming an NBA player.
Cool, thanks, Erick. Next question is, MyPlayer is a great mode, but still has problems with a good scoring system without being a point guard. Has this been modified?
Yeah, we've done a ton of work to our teammate grade this year. Specifically, we felt point guard was pretty decent. It had a number of improvements, but it was really all about helping the user when playing, specifically with small forward, power forward, center roles. It's a little more challenging to get the teammate grades. Just overall, the logic for it is a lot smarter. We've gotten rid of a lot of those edge cases where you would be docked for something that is very situational, such as being docked for a bad shot attempt on a last-second shot, when really there is no bad shot, for a last-second shot. You'll see things like that are just cleaned up, and you won't be docked for just needless things in the future. I don't know. The other aspect of it is it's just, the teammate grade drives the whole experience for the user. And anytime you kind of see something that doesn't make sense to you, you really feel like you're kind of pulled back from that immersion, factor of being there. So this year I can say we definitely spent a lot of time on that, and should be a lot more pleased with, the brains that's driving the mode this year.
Right on. Can you create a player, then play as him in creating a legend?
Creating a legend is all about kind of taking over the career of an NBA player and turning him into a legend. If you want to create a player, we have this really, really cool mode called My Player that I would recommend people try out.
Then the final question we've got in the My Player section is, will David Stern and or Adam Silver show up anywhere else in the game besides during player mode draft rounds?
David Stern and Adam Silver are highlighted in the My Player stuff, but they also appear in the various franchise components of the game, offline and online, where David Stern will be handling round 1, and of course we have Deputy Vice Commissioner Adam Silver on board this year handling round 2. And of course you'll see Stern in the championship celebration and all that good stuff, but primarily their attention is focused on the draft content.
Right on, thanks Eric. So let's move into some questions, get Mike on the phone here. Next question is, what would you say is the biggest improvement over NBA 2K11? And maybe you guys both want to chime in here.
I'll let Mike go first. Go for it.
Oh, wow. Biggest improvements. For me, I'm involved in gameplay, and for me, I'm always going to say the on-court experience. I mean, that's something that it's our bread and butter, and it's something that we spend a lot of time on. It's something we take a lot of pride in. And there's just so many different areas that get touched every year, and NBA 2K11 is such a strong title that, we felt like we had to work extra hard this year to make those improvements noticeable. So, and we'll talk about more in detail later some of these other questions, but the post-game being completely revamped is really cool. The shot stick got a huge upgrade this year. Just a number of different things on the court that make the game fun for me.
For me, the single biggest improvement, gameplay is a ton. It's a blast this year, but Mike has that part covered. So I'm going to go on something else that I think was the single biggest improvement, and that's it's actually the NBA's greatest feature. Taking a look back at this feature from concept to where it is now, it's really mind-boggling to me that we have 34 classic teams in the game, with up to 10 and 11 players per roster. Complete with heads and signature shots, and just all of the commentary that Steve Kerr and Kevin Harlan and Clark Kellogg just rambled on and on about in our studio for these guys. Just once you get that mode in your hands and you start playing it, I think only then can you truly appreciate the amount of work and level of detail that's gone into it. So I think just retelling that history of the NBA through that mode, I think is probably our single biggest achievement in NBA 2K12.
All right, guys. Now, going with that, the next question is, NBA 2K11 is considered by many to be the greatest basketball game ever made. What kind of pressure did that put on you when creating NBA 2K12?
Obviously, NBA 2K11 was a huge success, like I led with. I think there was a lot of pressure, not just from our fans, but also ourselves on, taking NBA 2K12 just to absolute new levels and just leaving NBA 2K11 behind. I think our single biggest critics for the NBA 2K franchise is ourselves. We have a very experienced development team, a very competitive development team, and one that really, I think, pushes each other constantly on various aspects of the game. Like Mike and Rob Jones and Zach and Jerson and those guys, they really manage the gameplay side of things. But, I absolutely have no problem walking over and talking to them about things, and they do the same thing for me. So we're really just one, cohesive team that's really looking to push not just the basketball market, but just pushing the sports game market and even bigger, the video game market as a whole. We're always trying to innovate, and I think those are the biggest challenges for us.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Eric is saying, the development team here is a really unique team in that we don't like to settle for things, and if you look at kind of our track record, I think it speaks to that. But if you were to come here just to meet the guys who work here, it's incredible. We're constantly just challenging each other, and I don't think you can go to any of the developers in our studio and ask them, do you feel like you've created the ultimate basketball game? And we'll all say no. We all feel like it can go a lot further, and there's a lot of work we have to do still, and we're going to keep pushing every year. And it's something that we don't consider last year's game being great something that puts pressure on us. It's more that we're happy, we celebrate it, but we're the day that game shifts, we're already working on the next one, and so we don't ever stop, and we just continue to push the envelope, and that's what makes this game team so great. Yeah,
guys, and I think the product really shows the passion that you guys have for the game. Moving on to the next question, it says the legendary players and teams in the game obviously took a great deal of effort to implement, and to many NBA fans, they're a terrific way to celebrate the league's history. Is this the beginning of the NBA 2K series broadening its scope? Can we expect even more of the NBA storied history to become part of the series going forward?
I'll take that one. I think to answer that, we're just going to have to stay tuned. There's definitely, we have a lot of ideas, kind of on our plate with the NBA 2K franchise. But I think today we're just celebrating NBA 2K12 and trying to get to as many questions as possible. So for the answer of what's coming, just stay tuned.
Right on, guys. Now let's jump into some specific gameplay questions. This is a pretty big chunk, so this is going to be exciting. Kicking things off, can you discuss some of the changes that have been implemented to the post-game?
Yeah, the post-game was something that we felt needed a big boost this year, and it was something that Zach and I spent a lot of time designing, and I think that if you play the demo at all, I think a lot of the feedback has been that it's been one of the biggest upgrades to the gameplay this year. For starters, you engage in the post now with the Y button on the 360 or the triangle button on the PS3. So immediately it makes it a lot easier and accessible to most people just to get into and out of the post. And then from there, we just wanted to get movement to feel right, and that's something that the old post game really couldn't handle, because if you weren't near a defender, basically you couldn't be in the post, and that was a problem that we felt that needed to be resolved. And so this year, if you hit the Y button on the 360 or the triangle on PS3 and you get into the post and you engage in the post, whether you're with a defender on your back or not, you can still play in the post. And so that's something that we felt needed to be there. You have a real freedom of movement to move in any direction while you're posted up. And on top of that, we just added a ton of new moves and shots. We just basically watched a lot of some of the greatest post players out there. Hakeem Olajuwon was a big inspiration, and also the power players like old school Shaq or Dwight Howard. Carmelo Anthony's another guy that has a lot of moves in the post. And we just wanted to be able to replicate some of the things you could do there. And I think that that's something that as designers that we have the luxury of having is we have the real NBA to watch and model our game after. So it makes things really easy. You watch games and you see an awesome move and we got to capture that. We got to get that into the game. And that's something that we were able to do with the post game this year. So it's just dozens of new shots and moves, and on the defensive side of things, there's a very intricate counter system, so that on defense, kind of last year, you felt a little bit like you just waited for the offensive guy to make a move, and then you try to steal it or block it. Now you can be a little more proactive, and you can kind of guess which way he's going to go, which way he's going to shoot. And if you guess properly, you can cause kind of a defensive win, so to speak. So it's a lot more fun to play. It's kind of its own little mini game within the game, and I think people are going to have a lot of fun with it this year.
Right on. Thanks, Mike. Passing still seems to plague basketball games in general. What has been done with 2K12 to improve passing this year?
The passing is a very challenging feature to work on, and we've thrown all of our engineers at it at one point or another. I think the biggest thing that we wanted to address with passing is targeting players, and so I think that just reworking that logic of who to choose when you're pointing the stick. A lot of people. They point the stick to another guy, and they press a button, they expect it to go a certain way, and another guy might do the exact same thing and expect a different guy to catch it. So it's a really big challenge, but I think it's a little bit tighter this year. Another thing that people complain a lot about was lead passing and cheese, and being able to kind of jerk guys around the court against their momentum, and that's something that we try to resolve as well. So there's a lot better contextual catches and consistency of movement into the catch this year, so it's a little more realistic. You can throw the ball ahead on players on a break, and I think that's a neat little addition to the game. Guys, they'll throw that kind of Hail Mary bomb pass, and then it'll hit the floor, and the player will catch up to it. So there's a lot of little things in passing like that I think kind of add up to make it a little bit stronger this year.
What improvements have been made to the AI, both on the offensive and defensive end of the court?
This one could be long, so I'll try to hit some highlights. I guess if I take a step back and look at what kind of the main goal was for the AI, and it is for us every year, is really just to make it feel like you're not playing against a drone. We want it to feel like you're playing against another user. And so to that end, I guess offensively I'll start with that. We wanted to make sure that all the AI players had all the same weapons that the user does, and that's something that's kind of overlooked at least overlooked last year. And for 2K12, it was a big push that we wanted to make sure that AI could do all the moves and do them in the right context and do all the shots that the user can pull off. And there's so many shots this year that it really makes the AI even look more dynamic, just the fact that they're using some of these new weapons. And so along with that, too, it's just, I guess, using them in the right context. And one of the things that we added last year is this concept of, I like to call flick flicks. And basically what they are, they're pump fakes that chain into step throughs or up and under moves. And the AI is just much smarter at using those weapons as well this year. So it's something I think you can even see in the demo that a lot of people are giving the feedback that Dwayne Wade is just a killer with it. He might spin into the lane, throw a pump fake that usually you couldn't, last year you couldn't even do it. You'd be forced to go into a layup. This year you can pump fake out of that and then switch directions and flip it up on the other side or something. And so it's fun to play against the AI this year. So it feels like they're thinking on the court and they're reading and reacting to the situations that the user would do. And defensively, there was just a lot of work done to defensive rotations, to pick and roll defense, to help defense. I mean, the list goes on and on. I could probably talk for days on how much time we spend on the AI, but I just played the demo. Pick up the game next week, and you'll see for yourself. It just feels a lot like you're playing more like a human, playing against another human.
Right on. What improvements have been made to the presentation of NBA 2K12?
That's also a tough one to answer. I will lead off, by saying for the 8th time on this call that there was a developer insight on this. It was actually released today, so definitely log on, give that a quick read. A couple of my favorite highlights on the presentation side are, the inclusion of Steve Kerr into the game this year. For the first time, the NBA 2K series has a 3-man commentary booth. And I've seen so many games try this and fail in the past, and I think what really sets our game apart is, watching those other games and seeing what they did. They would just kind of bring in a third guy, have him read along with the script with the previously recorded audio, and you could tell plain as day that the person was just, reading off of their script. It wasn't really interacting directly with, the other commentators. What we did this year is we actually brought all 3 guys in simultaneously, so they were sitting at the table with the mic in the middle. The rapport was tremendous. They were just playing off of each other, and you can really see that in the game. You'll see the commentary is very organic. It's painfully obvious that those guys were side by side during the entire recording session. Some of the other things that I really like to point out are in playoff games, you'll see the crowd wearing the team-specific colored shirts, kind of like they do, like the whiteout in Miami. That's a cool little boost to the playoff atmosphere. One of the things talked about in the Insight today was the broadcast dynamic camera, which is the broadcast stadium. We actually have custom camera angles for every stadium in the game. When you watch it on TV, every stadium is kind of built a little differently architecturally, and they place the cameras in different places for each arena. And we've really recreated that. So some teams like Phoenix will be kind of zoomed out and very high up. Some other teams are obviously very closer, lower in the bowl. So it really gives you a different feel of kind of recreating that true television broadcast when you're watching the game. Other things you'll notice, obviously improvements to the halftime show, the player of the game performance. I know we've all seen the teaser and the demo. That stuff's really, really amazing. Just lots of different things throughout. Playoff specific kind of a starting lineup things. Just different things to really set the game apart from the different times of the season. So some pretty exciting stuff there.
Right on. Going back to what you were talking about earlier with the broadcast crew, the next question is, presentation is clearly a big part of this year's 2K. The broadcast crew has remained intact, but I'm curious as to how many man-hours were spent in the booth to update the commentary. How much of that was devoted to the early era games?
Well, I definitely wouldn't say the commentary the crews remained intact. It was definitely with the addition of Steve Kerr. Doris did come back. I don't know exactly how many hours we had for each and all combined, but they were constantly here during the year, so it had to be a lot. But I do want to tell one really cool story about the early era games, obviously the NBA's greatest games. So we actually had, like we do with any recording session, we had full scripts ready for Kevin Clark and Steve. And when they came in, we told them about the feature we were doing. They were very excited. I thought it was a really cool way to honor the NBA, and Steve had a lot of jokes he wanted to make about commenting on himself in the game. And we gave them the scripts, and they kind of looked it over and said, wow, these are great. Is it cool if we just kind of ad-lib this ourselves? And we were like, sure. If you want to give it a shot, go ahead. And the end result is really, really cool because you can tell these guys aren't reading from a script. They're just sitting around a table telling stories about each and every player that you play with in those games, and it comes off incredibly well. And it's one of the many, many, many reasons why I think the NBA's greatest is probably the strongest feature in the game this year. So, yeah, I think the commentary in that, outstanding.
Right on. Next question. Play calling felt a little limited in NBA 2K11. How has this system been expanded for 2K12?
The play calling system is amazing this year, and the first thing we did was we actually enlisted some outside help. A guy who is a very, very avid 2K gamer, and a guy who coaches basketball and might as well be a scout for the NBA. And he knows every team inside and out. And when he came in, he basically we sat down in a room and just wanted to figure out everything that was missing. So one of the biggest additions was this idea of branching plays, and something that a play needs to do is it needs to flow. And in last year's game, they were kind of on these set paths, and once you're on that path, you couldn't really deviate from it. And with this year's game, you start going along with your play, and you follow the steps as they appear on screen. But depending on what the defense does and how it reacts to the play can branch out into different options. And it's one of the things that's really opened up the game, both for the user and also for the AI. The AI just makes them so much smarter. They don't force the issue this year because they can, read and react to the defense and make a smarter play and change the action on the fly. So that was a huge change. Another big thing for us was, making the plays fit the players better. So what we did this year was we set up this kind of archetype system where each player was given an archetype or maybe several archetypes. So a guy like Kobe Bryant would, his archetype would be maybe isolation, or it could be, a post player. It could be all these different things and aspects of his game. And what the play system does is it can feed into that system and know what kind of player he is and call the right plays for that player. And to that end, we also wanted to make sure that they could have more than, I think last year, maybe four. I think it was just 4 plays per player, or something like that. This year, I don't even know what the limit is, but there can be dozens of plays for one guy. So you'll see a different look each time down the floor when Kobe attacks you, and you won't always get the same outcome. And so it's a lot stronger this year. It's something it adds a lot to the game, and I can't really, underscore how important it is to make the AI smarter when they have a more robust play calling system.
Right on. Thanks, Mike. Did you ever consider adding a flop action to the game?
First, I actually agree with Jeff Van Gundy on this one, that the flop is a disgrace to basketball and shouldn't be allowed. But since it is still in the league and a lot of players do it, unfortunately, we have it in the game already. Something you can do, if you take a charge while a player is posting up, and if he does his aggressive shoulder charge at you and you time it right, then you can actually flop and get the call sometimes and sometimes not. So it's actually in the game this year.
All right. How much of an advantage will the blowout dribble become? A lot of people are worried it can be used as a cheese tool online. Will it be easy to defend against, or is it one of those things that you need the right opportunity to execute?
It's definitely something that you need to know how to use. A lot of people, I understand that concern that, you get a blowout dribble and you get out in the break and you get an easy layup or dunk every time, but it's really not that simple. You have to have open space in front of you. If you try to do the blowout dribble, in traffic, you'll almost always lose the ball. But it's something that, the dribbler, it's something that we just call in the house, and that's just the ball handler. It's something that we felt needed to be more accurate to real life, because when you're running the break, it's an exhilarating time. It's something where guys are really exploding out and trying to get an advantage in transition, and so that's something that the blowout dribble provides for us this year. And it's a useful tool, but it's also something you have to be a little bit careful with.